There's a money move you've probably heard a lot of noise about lately. Some people swear it's the smartest thing a retiree can do. Other people treat it like a trap you should never touch. It's called a Roth conversion, and the truth is, both camps are a little bit right. Because whether it's brilliant or a mistake depends entirely on you, on your situation, and on one quiet question almost nobody asks out loud. So today, calmly, let's clear the noise away. I'll show you what a Roth conversion actually is, the few years when it tends to make the most sense, the trap that can quietly raise your Medicare premium 2 years later, and a simple way to decide whether it's even worth a conversation. No hype, no scare. Just a clear way to think about it. Let's start at the very bottom, because half the confusion here is just vocabulary. Most retirement money in this country sits in what we'd call traditional accounts. A traditional IRA, an old 401k. You put money in before tax. It grew without being taxed, and the deal you made with the government was simple. You'll pay ordinary income tax on it later when you pull it out. So that account, as big as it looks on the statement, has a silent partner. Part of it isn't really yours. It belongs to the IRS, and they collect whenever you withdraw. A Roth conversion is just choosing to settle part of that bill early on your own terms. You move some money from the traditional account into a Roth account. You pay the ordinary income tax on the amount you move this year, voluntarily, at a rate you can see right now. And in exchange, that money and all of its future growth become tax-free. No tax when you withdraw it later. And, importantly, no required withdrawals on it down the road. That's the whole idea. It isn't a product anybody sells you. It isn't an investment. It's a decision about timing. Pay a tax you can see now to skip a tax you can't predict later. So here's the single question this entire decision rests on, and if you only take one thing from this video, take this one. The question is, do you think your tax rate will be higher later than it is right now? That's it. That's the whole bet. Because a Roth conversion means paying tax today instead of tomorrow. If your tax rate in the future is going to be higher than it is today, then paying now at today's lower rate is a win. If your future rate is going to be lower than today's, then paying now is a mistake. You'd have been better off waiting. Everything else we talk about today is really just detail hanging off that one question. Now, you'd think the answer would be obvious. Surely everyone's rate goes down in retirement, right? You're not earning a paycheck anymore. And for some people, yes, it does. But for a lot of careful savers, something surprising happens. They spent 30 or 40 years dutifully filling up a traditional 401k, and now they're sitting on a very large pre-tax account with that silent IRS partner inside it. And at a certain age, the government stops letting that money sit. It forces them to start pulling it out, whether they need it or not, and to pay tax on it. We'll get to that rule in a future episode, but the short version is this. A big traditional account can actually push your tax rate up later in retirement, not down. Let me make it concrete. Picture a man named George. George retired at 63. He's got a comfortable pension and some savings, and he's got a traditional IRA that's grown to around $900,000 over his career. Right now, in these first few years of retirement, his taxable income is fairly low. The pension covers things, and he hasn't turned on every income source yet. George doesn't realize that this $900,000 account is a tax bill waiting to come due. In about 10 years, the rules are going to force him to start drawing it down. That income is going to stack on top of his Social Security, and George could very well find himself in a higher tax bracket at 75 than he's in today at 63. For George, paying a little tax now, on purpose, at today's lower rate might be a great deal. That's the bet a Roth conversion makes, and you can only see it if you ask that one question first. So if the whole game is paying tax at a low rate now to avoid a higher rate later, the natural next question is, when is your rate actually low? And for a lot of people, there's a specific window, a quiet little valley in your tax life. And most folks walk straight through it without ever noticing it was there. Think about how income usually flows in these years. You stop working, so the paycheck goes away. That's the moment your income often drops to the lowest it's been in decades. But, and this is the key part, a couple of big income sources haven't switched on yet. Maybe you're delaying Social Security to let it grow, like we talked about last episode. And the rules don't force you to touch your traditional retirement accounts until your 70s. So for those few years, roughly from your early 60s until your mid-70s, your taxable income can sit unusually low. That valley is the window. That's when converting is cheapest, because you can move money out of that traditional account and have it taxed at a low bracket instead of a high one. Now here's why missing it stings. That window doesn't stay open. At a certain age, 73, as of 2026, and please verify your own, because the rules have shifted around. The government requires you to start taking money out of your traditional accounts every year. We'll cover those required withdrawals in detail next episode, but the point for today is what they do to this window. Once they start, that forced income lands on top of your Social Security, fills up your low brackets, and quietly slams the valley shut. After that, every conversion you do is taxed at that higher stacked-up rate. The cheap years are behind you. Let me show you with George again. Remember, George is 63 with that $900,000 IRA sitting in a low bracket right now. He's got about 10 years of valley in front of him. If George does nothing, that whole account keeps growing untouched until 73. And then the required withdrawals come roaring out all at once, on top of everything else, at the highest rate of his retirement. But if George uses these quiet years, converting a sensible slice each year, filling up his low bracket but not blowing past it, he can move a good chunk of that money into the tax-free Roth column gradually, cheaply, on his schedule instead of the government's. Same account. Same man. Wildly different tax bill depending only on whether he noticed the window, and, to be fair, not everyone has this valley. If you've got a large pension or you're still working, your income might not dip at all, and that changes the math. The point isn't that everyone should rush to convert. The point is to look, honestly, and ask, am I sitting in one of these low years right now without realizing it? Now we get to the part of this topic that I most wanted to make this video for, because it's the trap that ambushes the most careful people, the ones who did everything right and still got a surprise bill. And if you watched our episode on Medicare surcharges, this is going to ring a very loud bell. Here's the trap. When you do a Roth conversion, the amount you convert counts as income this year. That's the whole deal. You're choosing to be taxed on it now. But that extra income doesn't just affect your income tax. It raises a number called your MAGI, your Modified Adjusted Gross Income, and that number does two other quiet things at the same time. The first one is Medicare. Medicare looks at your income to decide what you pay for Part B and Part D, and above certain thresholds it adds a surcharge on top. That's IRMAA, the thing we spent a whole episode on. And here's the cruel timing. Medicare looks back 2 years. So a big conversion you do in 2026 can show up as a higher Medicare premium in 2028. A bill that arrives long after you've forgotten you did anything and catches you completely off guard. The second quiet effect ties back to last episode. That same higher income can drag more of your Social Security into the taxable column. So watch what one large, well-intentioned conversion can do all at once. It triggers income tax now. It pulls more of your Social Security into being taxed. And 2 years later, it quietly raises your Medicare premium. One move, 3 hits. Now, and this is the calm part, because I don't ever want to leave you with just the scary version. This is completely manageable once you can see it. The trap only springs on people who convert a big lump all in 1 year without looking at those lines. The fix is almost gentle. You size the conversion to stay underneath the next threshold, the next tax bracket, the next IRMAA tier, instead of blasting through it. And you spread the conversions out across several of those low gap years, a sensible slice at a time, rather than doing it all at once. Let me make it real. Say Maria, 65, wants to convert some of her IRA. If she converts one big chunk this year, she sails right past an IRMAA threshold, and 2 years from now her Medicare premium jumps for the whole year. But if Maria converts a smaller amount, enough to fill her low bracket but stay under that IRMAA line, and then does the same next year and the year after, she gets the same money moved into the Roth over time without ever tripping the surcharge. Same destination. She just didn't kick the trap on the way there. That's the difference between a conversion that helps and one that quietly costs. So beyond that big IRMAA trap, there are a handful of smaller mistakes that turn a smart conversion into an expensive one. Let me walk you through them quickly, because any one of them can undo the whole benefit. The first one, I have to repeat because it's the most common, converting too much in a single year. Enthusiasm is the enemy here. People hear Roth conversions are good and try to do it all at once, and they launch themselves into a higher bracket and over an IRMAA line in the same move. Slow and spread out almost always beats big and fast. The second mistake is a quiet one, and it's about how you pay the tax. When you convert, you owe ordinary income tax on the amount. The question is where that tax money comes from. If you pay it out of the IRA itself, converting $100 but holding back $20 to cover the tax, you just shrunk the very thing you were trying to grow, and if you're under 59.5, that held back piece can even count as an early withdrawal. The far better move, when you can manage it, is to pay the conversion tax from money outside the account, from regular savings. That way every dollar you convert actually lands in the Roth and gets to grow tax-free. If you can't pay the tax from outside, that's often a sign the conversion is bigger than it should be this year. Third, there's a calendar trap. A Roth conversion counts in the year it actually happens. This isn't like an IRA contribution, where you get until April of the next year to count it for the prior one. A conversion has to be done by December 31st to land in this tax year. So those last weeks of December are when these decisions actually get made, not in spring when you're doing your taxes and it's already too late. And fourth, timing it against the rest of your life. The worst year to do a big conversion is a year you already have a lot of income, the year you sold a house, took a large one-time withdrawal, or had some other windfall. Stacking a conversion on top of an already high year is how you light up every threshold at once. The whole art of this is doing it in the quiet years, not the loud ones. There's also a wrinkle called the pro rata rule if you happen to have both pre-tax and after-tax money in your IRAs. It's worth knowing the phrase so you can ask about it, but the details are exactly the kind of thing to hand to a professional. So let's pull all of this into something you can actually use, not a formula, because the honest truth is the right answer here is genuinely individual, but a simple way to think about whether this is even worth a conversation. 3 questions. Question 1. Are you actually in one of those low-income gap years right now? If you've stopped working, you're not yet taking required withdrawals, and your income is unusually low for a few years. That's the green light to look closer. If your income is high and steady, the window may not be open for you, and that's a perfectly fine answer. Question 2. Can you pay the tax from outside the account? If you've got savings to cover the tax bill without dipping into the IRA itself, a conversion gets a lot more attractive. If covering the tax would mean raiding the very account you're converting, that's usually a sign to go smaller or to wait. Question 3. Will converting this particular slice keep you under the next line, the next tax bracket, and especially the next IRMAA threshold? If you can move a sensible amount and stay under those lines, you get the benefit without the trap. If the amount you're tempted to convert would blow past them, shrink it. If those 3 line up, a low year, tax paid from outside, and a slice that stays under the thresholds, then a modest, spread-out conversion is genuinely worth taking to a professional to run your actual numbers. And if they don't line up, then waiting is not failing. Waiting is a perfectly good, often correct decision. The entire goal here is to make this choice on purpose, in a year you picked, in an amount you sized, never as a panic, never convert it all now before something changes. Calm and deliberate wins this one every time. So here's the whole thing in one breath. A Roth conversion is just paying tax now at a rate you can see to avoid an unknown tax later. And the only question that really matters is whether your rate will be higher down the road than it is today. For a lot of careful savers with big traditional accounts, it will be. The cheapest time to convert is the quiet valley between retiring and your mid-70s, before required withdrawals slam that window shut. The big trap is doing too much in 1 year and tripping the IRMAA surcharge 2 years later, plus pulling more of your Social Security into being taxed. The fixes are gentle. Convert smaller slices, spread across several years, paid for with outside money, sized to stay under the next threshold, and done by December 31st. And the way to decide is 3 honest questions. A low year, tax paid from outside, A slice that stays under the lines. That's it. No magic. Just timing, done on purpose. Here's what I'd leave you with. A Roth conversion isn't a miracle, and it isn't a trap. It's a lever. And like any lever, it helps enormously when you pull it at the right time, in the right amount, and it can cost you if you yank it in a panic. You don't have to become a tax expert. You just have to know the window exists, know the trap exists, and bring your real numbers to someone who can look at your whole picture before you do anything. If this helped clear the noise away, send it to one person who's been wrestling with this decision, maybe someone who just retired and is sitting in that quiet window right now without knowing it. And in the next video, we'll talk about the rule I kept mentioning today, the required withdrawals that start in your 70s, the ones that quietly close this whole window and can push up your taxes and your Medicare premium if you're not ready for them. It's the natural other half of today's conversation. I'm Daniel Brooks. This is Money Desk, where we make your money easy to explain. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.